What God showed me about Charlie Kirk will shock you. Not because it's about Charlie, but because it's about what God reveals through people who refuse to bow to culture. You see, when God wants to teach you something deep, he doesn't always send you a sermon. Sometimes he sends you a person, and that person becomes a living example, a mirror reflecting divine principles that challenge your comfort, confront your compromise, and call you to courage. I was watching Charlie one day, and God whispered something that stunned me. He said, "You're not watching a man, you're watching a message." Because every time God raises up a voice in the earth, that voice is not just speaking opinions, it's speaking revelation wrapped in human imperfection. You may not agree with every word, every style, every stance, but you can't deny when someone is anointed for confrontation, and that's what God showed. He doesn't use perfect people, he uses positioned people. He uses people who are willing to stand where others are silent, speak where others are scared, and move when others hesitate. Shocked me was not what Charlie was saying, but the spiritual principle behind it. God showed me that conviction is louder than popularity. The world celebrates influence, heaven celebrates obedience. People chase platforms, but God rewards those who protect principles. When you stand for truth, you won't always stand with the crowd. And if you think your calling will make you comfortable, you've misunderstood what calling really is. God's assignments often come with opposition because your purpose threatens the systems of darkness that profit from deception. I began to realize that boldness is not arrogance, it's assignment. When someone speaks boldly, the flesh hears arrogance, but the spirit hears authority. God told Jeremiah, "Don't be afraid of their faces." Why? Because every prophet must develop the courage to confront what the world has normalized. You can't change what you're afraid to challenge. And when I saw Charlie speak with conviction, I saw something bigger than a person expressing an opinion. I saw an assignment being executed. God reminded me that controversy is not always the enemy. It's often the exposure of complacency. When light enters darkness, there's always a reaction. And sometimes God will raise up a controversial figure just to expose how comfortable the church has become with compromise. We love comfort more than confrontation. We love peace more than truth. But the kind of peace that comes from silence is not real peace. It's quiet surrender. God uses controversy to shake those who've fallen asleep in comfort and to remind us that truth is never convenient, but it's always necessary. And then God said something even deeper. Your reaction reveals your reflection. How you respond to someone walking in bold truth reveals what's inside of you. If you're irritated by conviction, it might be because comfort has become your idol. If someone's Korah, GE, offends you, it might be because fear has taken up residence in your spirit. We don't always dislike people because of who they are. We often dislike them because they remind us of who we're supposed to be. That revelation hit me hard. God wasn't showing me Charlie to make me judge him. He was showing me Charlie to make me examine myself. Am I walking in truth? Am I bold enough to speak when it's unpopular? Am I representing the kingdom with the same passion I expect from others? Because here's the truth. God will use anyone, and I mean anyone, to awaken your purpose. The person you criticize might be the person God is using to confront your comfort. Then God said something that broke me down. The message is greater than the messenger. We spend so much time debating the personality that we miss the principle. God can use a donkey to deliver a message. He can use a king, a servant, a politician, a preacher, or even a stranger to speak a truth that changes lives. Don't get distracted. D by the vessel. Focus on the revelation, because if you reject the messenger, you might miss your message. The shocking thing about what God showed me wasn't about Charlie Kirk himself. It was about how God operates. He raises up people who are willing to stand in uncomfortable places, say unpopular things, and carry a message that shakes the status quo. And while the world calls them controversial, heaven calls them courageous. While critics call them divisive, God calls them deliverers of truth. We've entered a time where God is exposing motives, testing courage, and refining conviction. He's separating those who are driven by applause from those who are driven by assignment. And make no mistake, those who walk boldly in truth will face backlash. But remember, the same fire that burns the straw purifies the gold. You don't need to be liked to be anointed. You need to be aligned. So what God showed me about Charlie Kirk wasn't about politics or personality. It was about principles. It was about what happens when someone chooses obedience over opinion, truth over trends, and calling over comfort. God uses those moments to remind us of our own responsibility. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't to be like Charlie or anyone else. It's to be the version of you that God designed before fear made you shrink. God is raising up a generation that doesn't flinch when culture shifts, that doesn't apologize for believing truth, and that doesn't trade conviction for convenience. And if you're hearing this right now, maybe God is using this message to tell you it's your turn to stand, it's your turn to speak, it's your turn to live by conviction, not convenience. Because when you walk in your divine assignment, people will misunderstand you. They'll criticize you, mislabel you, and even oppose you. But remember, they did the same to every person God ever used to shift the course of history. So don't chase acceptance, chase accuracy. Don't aim to be liked, aim to be lie. And when you walk boldly in truth, heaven will back you up even if earth doesn't. Brish. That's what God showed me. The revelation wasn't about a man, it was about a mindset. It was about a call to rise, to stand, and to speak. Because every generation needs voices that refuse to bow. And if you have the courage to carry truth, no matter who agrees or disagrees, you'll become the living proof that obedience still moves mountains. So what God showed me about Charlie Kirk will shock you. But only if you've been sleeping. Because God's not just showing us people, he's showing us patterns. And if you pay attention, you'll realize this: the same boldness you admire in others is the boldness God's waiting to awaken in you. God doesn't reveal people, he reveals principles through people. That means when God allows you to see someone's life, their success, their struggle, or even their mistakes, he's not asking you to judge them, he's asking you to learn. Every person becomes a divine classroom if you have the eyes to see. We live in a world that loves to analyze personalities, but heaven is interested in patterns. God will use a person's journey to illustrate a spiritual law, a truth that applies far beyond the individual. When I say God doesn't reveal people, I mean this: God is not in the business of gossip, he's in the business of guidance. When he shows you someone's strength, it's to stir your faith. When he shows you their weakness, it's to warn your flesh. When he shows you their breakthrough, it's to remind you that he's still in the miracle working business. And when he shows you their downfall, it's not for mockery, it's a mirror moment. It's a reminder that without grace, any of us could fall into the same pit. See, we often look at someone and think, God, why are you showing me this person? But what you should be asking is, God, what are you showing me through this person? Because he never reveals something to waste revelation. Every exposure is education. He'll let you see a person rise from nothing so you can learn the power of perseverance. He'll let you see a person lose everything so you can understand the danger of pride. He'll let you witness someone standing for truth so you can see what conviction looks like under pressure. What God revealed to me about Charlie Kirk wasn't about who he is. It was about what he represents. God was showing me that he uses people to embody principles that he wants his people to remember. He'll use one man's courage to remind another man of his calling. He'll use one woman's discipline to challenge another woman's excuses. That's how God teaches. He puts truth in motion through human examples. But here's where many miss it. When God reveals a person, most people stop at personality. They get caught up in opinions, what they like, what they dislike, what they agree with, what they don't. But revelation was never meant to make you critical. It was meant to make you conscious. Conscious of what God is teaching you about yourself. Conscious of how he moves in others so you can identify how he might want to move in you. When you stop looking at people and start looking through people, you graduate from judgment to discernment. You begin to see divine fingerprints in human stories. You realize that God hides messages in the lives of men and women who are willing to walk boldly in their assignment. Some of them will be celebrated, others will be criticized, but all of them carry a clue to how God wants to work in the earth. So the next time God allows you to see someone rise, don't just watch, observe. The next time he allows you to see someone fall, don't just gossip. Reflect. Because what he's revealing isn't the person, it's the principle. He's saying, learn from this, grow from this, apply this. God's revelations are never random. They're always relational. He reveals through people because we learn through people. The truth is, if you can discern principles instead of personalities, you'll unlock wisdom that most people miss. You'll stop being distracted by differences and start being directed by divine patterns. And that's when life shifts from seeing people as subjects of discussion to seeing them as instruments of revelation. God doesn't reveal people to expose them. He reveals them to expand you. Ibrahua conviction is louder than popularity. In a world that celebrates followers more than faith and applause more than authenticity, God is still looking for people who will choose conviction over comfort. Conviction doesn't need a crowd to confirm it. It stands on truth, even when truth stands alone. Popularity fades when the noise dies down, but conviction echoes through eternity. When God gives you conviction, he's not giving you an opinion. He's giving you a divine assignment. Conviction is heaven's fingerprint on your spirit, a reminder that you're not here to blend in, you're here to stand out. The world will always reward those who play it safe, who say what's conveyed. Nient, who bend to fit the moment. But God elevates those who stay rooted in what's right, even when it costs them favor with men. You see, popularity can open doors, but conviction determines whether you can stay in the room. Because the truth is, many people gain platforms they're not prepared to stand on because their popularity grew faster than their principles. When you build your life on applause, your identity rises and falls with public opinion. But when you build your life on conviction, no storm, no critic, no trend can shake you. Conviction gives you stability in a world built on shifting sands. When I observed what God was showing me, I realized something powerful. Conviction will isolate you before it elevates you. Before God can trust you with influence, he'll test your integrity. He'll allow people to misunderstand you, mislabel you, even mock you, just to see if you care more about being right with him than being liked by them. Conviction is forged in solitude, not in spotlight. That's why most people avoid it, because it demands sacrifice before it brings success. God showed me that true conviction carries a cost. It might cost you relationships, opportunities, or approval, but everything you lose standing for truth, God replaces with something stronger: peace, clarity, and divine backing. Heaven always supports the courageous. When you walk in conviction, you're not walking alone. You're walking with God's authority behind every word you speak. And here's what most don't realize: popularity can deceive, but conviction delivers. Popularity tells you what you want to hear. Conviction tells you what you need to hear. Popularity builds an audience. Conviction builds a legacy. One fades when trends shift. The other stands when time tests it. The men and women who change history are never the ones who chase popularity. They're the ones who stood on principle when everyone else stayed silent. Look through scripture and you'll see it over and over. Noah wasn't popular when he built the ark. Moses wasn't popular when he stood before Pharaoh. Daniel wasn't popular when he prayed in defiance of the law. Jesus himself wasn't popular when he turned over tables and told the truth that pierced pride. But all of them had one thing in common: they had conviction. And long after the applause of their generation faded, their obedience still speaks. Conviction is heaven's way of separating those who perform for attention from those who live for purpose. It's not glamorous, it's not easy, and it's not always applauded, but it's always rewarded. Because when you stand on truth, even when the world rejects you, God recognizes you. He looks for those who refuse to dilute their message to be accepted by the masses. So don't chase what's trending, chase what's timeless. Don't adjust your values to stay relevant, stay righteous. Popularity can make you visible, but conviction makes you valuable. Because one day, when the crowd moves on and the spotlight fades, what will remain is not how many people knew your name, but how many lives were changed because you dared to live by truth. Your conviction speaks long after your voice goes silent. It's not the noise of the crowd that moves heaven. It's the courage of one person who says, even if I stand alone, I will still stand for what's right. That's the kind of conviction that shakes nations, transforms hearts, and pleases God. Conviction doesn't whisper to fit in, it roars to lift others higher. And when you walk in that kind of truth, your life becomes louder than any fame the world can offer. Boldness is not arrogance, it's assignment. The world has confused the two for so long that when someone stands with divine confidence, people mistake it for pride. But real boldness doesn't come from ego, it comes from obedience. It's not the noise of a self-made person, it's the sound of someone who knows they've been sent. Boldness isn't about trying to prove you're right, it's about making sure God. Truth is heard. It's not about being louder than others, it's about being faithful to the voice that called you. When God places an assignment in your spirit, it will demand boldness, because every divine calling comes with resistance. And when resistance shows up, timidity won't survive. You'll need courage that's not rooted in self-confidence, but in God confidence. The kind of boldness that says, I might not be qualified, but I'm called. I might not have all the answers, but I have the assignment. That's not arrogance. That's authority. See, arrogance draws attention to self, but boldness draws attention to truth. Arrogance says, look at me, but boldness says, look at God. Arrogance glorifies personality, while boldness amplifies purpose. And if you're not careful, people who lack courage will always label confidence as arrogance because it exposes their own fear. But you can't dim your light just because someone else is uncomfortable with your shine. Ibrahim, when God gives you an assignment, he equips you with boldness for a reason. Because the message you carry will often confront darkness, challenge comfort zones, and disrupt the status quo. That's why your boldness will offend some people. It reminds them of what they were called to do but refused to pursue. Every voice that carries truth will sound too loud to those who've settled for silence, but that's okay. You're not called to please them, you're called to please Him. Hebrew boldness is the language of purpose. It speaks when others stay silent. It moves when others hesitate. It declares what heaven has decreed, even when earth disagrees. When you understand that your voice is an assignment, you stop needing validation from people who don't share your vision. You realize that your confidence isn't pride, it's preparation. You're not being arrogant, you're being obedient. Look at the people God used throughout history. Every one of them had to walk in holy boldness. David stood before Goliath with nothing but a sling and faith. Esther approached the king knowing it could cost her life. Peter preached boldly, even after being threatened with prison. Jesus himself walked into temples, confronted hypocrisy, and spoke truth that rattled religious systems. That wasn't arrogance, it was divine authority on display. Hebrew boldness is proof that you've been with God. It's what happens when His presence replaces your fear. You stop asking, what will they think? And start asking, what did God say? That shift changes everything, because when you know who sent you, you stop worrying about who resists you. You're not here to win a popularity contest. You're here to fulfill a purpose. Sometimes God will use your boldness to break chains that timidity could never touch. Your courage might give someone else permission to rise. Your voice might awaken a generation that's been lulled to sleep by fear. That's why the enemy attacks boldness so fiercely, because he knows one bold believer can do more damage to darken than 1,000 silent ones. Eber. You can always tell when someone's walking in true boldness because they carry peace with power. They're firm but humble, strong but surrendered. They don't speak from pride, they speak from purpose. They don't shout to be seen, they declare to be heard in heaven. That's the kind of boldness that shifts atmospheres, not because it's loud, but because it's aligned. So don't let anyone shame you out of your assignment. Don't let fear disguise itself as humility. God didn't call you to shrink so others could feel safe. He called you to stand so others could feel strength. Boldness doesn't mean you think you're better. It means you know you're chosen. And when you walk in that understanding, you stop apologizing for your fire. You stop toning down your truth to fit other people's comfort zones. You stop asking for permission to be who God already approved. Because the truth is, boldness is not arrogance. It's alignment with divine instruction. It's heaven saying go and you saying yes. It's courage wrapped in surrender, confidence fueled by purpose, and authority anchored in humility. When you operate from that place, you don't just speak, you shift atmospheres. You don't just stand, you transform spaces. You become the living evidence that faith is not quiet when truth is on the line. Eber. So walk in your assignment with holy boldness. Speak when God says speak. Move when He says move. Because boldness is not about being seen, it's about being sent. And when you walk in that kind of obedience, the same power that backed the prophets, the apostles, and the Son of God Himself will back you too. Hebrew 3, God uses controversy to expose complacency. We live in a time where everyone wants peace, but few want purpose. Everyone wants comfort, but not everyone wants conviction. And sometimes the only way God can wake people up is by shaking what they've grown too comfortable in. Controversy becomes the spiritual alarm clock that disrupts our sleep in me. Diacrity, it's not meant to destroy, it's meant to disturb what's been dormant. When God stirs controversy, it's because he's confronting something that's been tolerated for too long. He'll raise up a voice, a movement, a moment that divides public opinion, not because he loves division, but because truth always divides. It separates light from darkness, purpose from passivity, faith from fear. Controversy is often God's way of asking, where do you really stand? But brew, chew. Many people think that peace means the absence of conflict, but real peace is the presence of truth. God will disturb false peace to restore divine order. If your peace requires you to stay silent when truth is being trampled, that's not peace, that's participation in deception. And so God will send controversy like a holy disruption to reveal who's anchored in faith and who's anchored in fear. Every great move of God in history began with controversy. Noah building an ark when no one had seen rain, that was controversial. Moses standing before Pharaoh demanding freedom, that was controversial. Elijah calling out false prophets, that was controversial. Even Jesus turning over tables in the temple, that was the ultimate controversy. But in every case, what looked like chaos to man was actually clarity from heaven. When God allows controversy to rise, it's because he's confronting comfort. He knows that comfort kills calling. When people get too comfortable, they stop growing, they stop questioning, and they stop listening for his voice. So he sends a shaking. He allows disagreement, tension, and exposure not to embarrass his people, but to awaken them. Because what we tolerate in peace will eventually dominate us in silence. Sometimes the controversy you see around you is not the enemy's attack. It's God's invitation. He's inviting you to discern truth in the noise, to take a stand in the storm. He's saying, stop watching from the sidelines. Stop playing it safe. Stop protecting your comfort zone while Ruth is under fire. Controversy separates spectators from soldiers. It reveals who truly believes what they say they believe. When I look around, I see how God uses controversial voices and moments to force people to choose sides. Not political sides, but spiritual ones. Will you stand for truth when it's unpopular? Will you speak when silence feels safer? Will you trust God when obedience costs you approval? Those are the questions controversy reveals. You can't grow without tension, and you can't transform without discomfort. The shaking isn't there to destroy you, it's there to refine you. It exposes what's been hidden beneath the surface: fear, pride, apathy, indifference. God will bring those things to light, not to shame you, but to shape you. Because before he can revive a generation, he must first reveal their idols. Controversy is often heaven's megaphone in a culture that's gone deaf to conviction. It gets people talking, questioning, thinking, and searching again. It fork. Asks the church to stop playing safe and start walking in truth. It exposes religious routine, shallow faith, and empty talk. It shows who's truly committed to kingdom values and who's just committed to comfort. So when you see controversy, don't just see chaos, see calling. Don't just see division, see divine diagnosis. God is revealing hearts, separating pretenders from pursuers. The same fire that offends the flesh purifies the spirit. The same argument that divides the crowd unites the committed. The same truth that causes tension creates transformation. And here's the deeper truth. Controversy doesn't create character. It reveals it. It shows you where your faith really stands. Are you anchored in God's word or swayed by public opinion? Are you more concerned about being right with people or being aligned with truth? That's why controversy is necessary. It forces the hidden to become visible. So when God uses controversy, it's not a sign that he's absent. It's proof that he's active. He's shaking systems, stirring souls, and separating the lukewarm from the lit. He's saying, I'd rather have a small group of bold believers than a crowd of comfortable spectators. Because comfort never changes the world, but conviction always does. God uses controversy to expose complacency because he loves you too much to let you stay asleep in a lie. And sometimes what feels like conflict is actually an awakening. He's not trying to make you angry. He's trying to make you aware. He's not stirring division to destroy unity. He's exposing apathy to restore truth. So don't run from controversy when it's God ordained. Lean in, listen, discern, ask, Lord, what are you revealing through this? Because behind every controversy that shakes the earth, there's a call from heaven saying, wake up, my people, stand up for truth. Don't settle for peace that costs you purpose. And if you can see through the noise, you'll realize that what looks like chaos is often the very beginning of Reverend Eval, Abra. Your reaction reveals your reflection. The way you respond to people, problems, and pressure is not just a reflection of them, it's a revelation of you. God uses reactions like mirrors to show you where your heart truly is. Anyone can look strong when life is calm, but how you respond when you're tested exposes what's really inside. Your reaction is the report card of your maturity. Bro, when God showed me this, it humbled me, because we often think reactions are about what someone else did, but in truth, they're about what we still need to grow through. The things that irritate you most often expose the areas where you still need healing. The people who trigger you are not your enemies. They're your teachers. They reveal wounds you thought were gone, pride you thought you'd conquered, and fears you thought you'd buried. God allows those moments not to condemn you, but to grow you. Ibra. Every time you react, heaven is taking notes on what you reflect. Are you reflecting peace or pride? Grace or grievance? Faith or frustration? Because your reaction doesn't just show who hurt you, it shows who healed you. If your heart is filled with peace, you'll respond with peace. If your heart is filled with bitterness, you'll respond with blame. You don't respond based on what's around you, you respond based on what's within you. Think about Jesus. When he was betrayed, beaten, and mocked, his reaction revealed his reflection. He didn't curse back, he forgave. He didn't defend himself, he fulfilled his assignment. That's divine maturity, to stay mission-focused even when surrounded by misunderstanding. He didn't mirror the hatred that came at him because he was anchored in something deeper. His reaction wasn't emotional, it was intentional. God will often use people and situations to test what kind of reflection you're carrying. That's why some of the same kinds of problems keep showing up in your life. It's not punishment, it's practice. He's giving you another chance to respond differently this time. Because when your reaction changes, your results change. Every spiritual promotion comes after a test of reaction. God can't trust you with influence if you can't handle irritation. You say you want to lead, but can you stay calm when you're criticized? You say you want to grow, but can you stay kind when you're challenged? You say you want to walk in purpose, but can you keep your peace when your plan falls apart? Those moments reveal who you really are becoming. Your reaction shows whether your faith is still a feeling or has become a foundation. Your reflection is not what you look like when everything goes right, it's what you look like when everything goes wrong. When people misunderstand you, do you seek revenge or restoration? T's proven by how gracefully you handle offense. Weak people react out of emotion, but strong people respond out of revelation. When you're anchored in God's truth, you realize not every battle is yours to fight, not every insult deserves your energy, and not every misunderstanding needs your explanation. Sometimes your silence is louder than your defense. The enemy loves to bait you into emotional reactions because every time you react in the flesh, you step out of the spirit. But when you pause and let God filter your emotions before you respond, your reaction becomes a reflection of his nature, not your frustration. That's what spiritual growth looks like. Not perfection, but control. Not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. The truth is, reactions reveal alignment. If you're aligned with heaven, you'll reflect peace even in chaos. If you're aligned with ego, you'll reflect pride in every challenge. Your words, your tone, your posture, they all reveal your inner world. And that's why God allows certain storms, to give you a mirror moment. He's not asking, what did they do to you? He's asking, what did that moment reveal about you? So the next time you're tempted to lash out, pause, ask yourself, what does this reaction say about what's in me? Because your reactions are not random. They're indicators of your roots. If your roots are in love, your reaction will show grace. If your roots are in fear, your reaction will show defensiveness. You don't have to pray for God to change your circumstances. Sometimes you just need him to change your reflection. When you master your reaction, you master your peace. When you choose calm over chaos, forgiveness over fury, and faith over frustration, you start reflecting the image of the one who created you. You become a walking example of spiritual stability. That's when people start noticing there's something different about you, not because life is easy, but because your spirit is steady. Your reaction reveals your reflection. So before you respond, remember, the world isn't watching what happened to you, it's watching how you handle it. And when you choose to respond from a place of wisdom, grace, and truth, you don't just pass the test, you reflect the character of God himself. Hebrew, the message is greater than the messenger. That's something God had to teach me the hard way. Because in this world, we've become obsessed with personalities and platforms instead of principles and purpose. We evaluate who's speaking instead of listening to what's being said. But when God gives a message, he doesn't always package it in the vessel you expect. Sometimes he'll use someone you disagree with, someone you don't like, or someone you'd never choose, just to see if you can recognize his voice beyond your bias. God has never been limited to perfect messengers. He's only ever looked for willing ones. All through Scripture, he's proven that he can deliver truth through anyone. He spoke through prophets, kings, shepherds, fishermen, and even a donkey. The point was never the prestige of the messenger. It was always the power of the message. The messenger is just the vehicle. The message is the destination. And if you reject the vehicle, you might miss where God is trying to take you. We've lost so much revelation because we were too busy critiquing the carrier. We get caught up in tone, style, or appearance, forgetting that God often hides treasure in clay jars. He does that on purpose to humble us, to remind us that it's not about who's holding the word, it's about who sent it. God's truth is so powerful that it can come through imperfect vessels and still carry eternal weight. When the message is from heaven, it doesn't need the approval of man to be valid. When I looked at what God was showing me through Kirk, it wasn't about agreeing with everything he said. It was about discerning the principle within what he represented. The message of courage, of standing for truth, of refusing. G, to bow to the world's pressure. That was the lesson. God was saying, stop getting distracted by the person and start paying attention to the pattern, because he can use anyone as a teacher if your heart is humble enough to learn. The danger of idolizing or demonizing messengers is that both extremes make you miss God. When you idolize the messenger, you elevate them above the message and create dependence on a person instead of the presence. When you demonize the messenger, you close your ears to what God might be trying to say through them. Either way, the enemy wins, because distraction is his oldest strategy. He doesn't need to stop the message if he can get you to ignore it. The truth is, every messenger is flawed, and God knows it. That's why he chooses them anyway. Because when a flawed person carries a flawless word, it glorifies him, not them. The imperfection of the messenger magnifies the perfection of the message. When you understand that, you stop worshiping personalit, IES, and start honoring principles. You stop chasing charisma and start craving truth. God's messengers are never the main event. They're the microphone. A microphone has no power without a voice speaking through it. The moment it takes credit for the sound, it loses its purpose. The same is true with us. We're vessels, not sources. Instruments, not idols. The value is not in who's speaking, it's in the truth being spoken. And that's why discernment is so critical. You've got to learn to listen through the vessel, not to the vessel. Sometimes the person you least expect will say the thing you most need to hear. Sometimes the person you dismiss will carry the exact word that unlocks your next season. That's why humility is the key to revelation. If you can't hear from someone because of how they look, talk, or act, you've limited the ways God can reach you. He'll offend your expectations to test your discernment. He'll use an unlikely messenger to see if you're really hungry for truth or just comfortable with your preferences. The message is always greater than the messenger, because the messenger is temporary, but the truth is eternal. People come and go, names rise and fall, but God's word never returns void. It keeps moving through time, through generations, through different mouths, carrying the same divine purpose to awaken, correct, and transform. The messenger may stumble, but the message still stands. The voice may fade, but the echo remains. So don't get caught up in who's delivering the word. Focus on what heaven is trying to deliver to you. God can speak through anyone, an enemy, a stranger, a child, a critic, even someone you disagree with, because his goal is not to make you comfortable. It's to make you conscious. The question isn't, do I like the messenger? The real question is, am I listening to the message? Be broker, which are message. When you start valuing revelation over reputation, your discernment sharpens. You start hearing God everywhere, in conversations, in moments, even in challenges. Because you understand that no voice, no vessel, no platform is greater than the purpose behind it. The power was never in the person, it was always in the principle. Sure, the message is greater than the messenger. Don't reject what heaven is trying to say just because it didn't come from the mouth you expected. God hides truth in unlikely places. And if you can train your spirit to hear his tone through imperfect voices, you'll never miss what he's saying, no matter who he uses to say it. As we come to the end of this message, the truth is clear. What God shows us through people is never about them. It's about principles, patterns, and purposes he wants to awaken in our own lives. He reveals lessons through conviction, boldness, controversy, reactions, and even imperfect messengers to shape our hearts, sharpen our faith, and strengthen our character. Every challenge, every provocative voice, every uncomfortable moment is an opportunity to rise above complacency and brag, courage, and respond with wisdom. Prayer. God isn't asking us to follow people blindly or worship personalities. He's asking us to recognize truth, to align with his principles, and to carry our own assignment faithfully. Popularity fades, controversy passes, and messengers come and go. But the message of God's kingdom, his principles, and his purpose endures forever. So today, take the revelation God has shown you and let it change you. Let it teach you how to stand firm in conviction, how to walk boldly in assignment, how to discern truth beyond the vessel, and how to allow every trial, challenge, or controversy to reveal the real condition of your heart. Your life is a reflection of what you choose to embrace, and your obedience will echo long after opinion fades. Remember this: God's truth is greater than people, greater than circumstance, and greater than fear. Stand for it, live for it, reflect it, and when you do, you'll not only see transformation in your own life, you'll become a living testament to the power of God's principles at work in the earth. The message is greater than the messenger, and the lesson is greater than the moment. So rise, stand, speak, and walk in the purpose God has placed within you, because your obedience today can change your tomorrow, your world, and even generations to come.